Here we are, Life in Stages. I'm Joel Greenberg, and today we are going to be speaking with, listening to, having a conversation with Seana McKenna. Hello, Seana.
Hi, Joel.
Thank you. Thank you for being available. And I'm going to begin a little differently. I will get to my starting point, which is that's the only scripted thing that I use. But before I get to that, you sent me a note a few days ago asking me whether I wanted to read a kind of, program-sized bio or your whole resume. So I said, no, you just send me the whole thing, which you did. And it's an extraordinary document. It's 6 pages. I say this because it is. It's remarkable reading through all the work you've done in so many areas, as largely as an actor, a director, it's you've covered. There isn't a base that I haven't discovered a base that you haven't already conquered. So it's with that in mind that I want to be I want to feel, but at the end of the conversation, that I've been fair to the extensive work that you've done. So that's my intro. Thank you for sending it to me.
It's my private keep track of what I've done, so sure. I can remember, because you forget. Yeah. You go, gosh, I was in that, or I worked with that person.
Yeah. So the beginning point, which is my great curiosity, given the career that you have, the life that you have dedicated yourself to, did this begin sort of in childhood? Did this begin in your family? Was it an influence that really fed you early on?
It wasn't in my family. Mm-hmm. I think I had a great uncle who loved the theater out in the West. But I never met him. Mm-hmm. But my mother sang, as a young woman, mm-hmm. Contemporary stuff, which was at that time 30s and 40s mm-hmm. and stuff. But no, I think it was my childhood. I didn't play with dolls much, but I played with puppets. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I had a little puppet theater my dad built me, and I played with puppets, and I loved the puppets. Mm-hmm. And then my next door neighbor was an actress, Elizabeth Walsh, and she was a British actress. Mm-hmm. And I thought she organized the neighborhood into a little group to do plays, but actually, apparently, I went to her with my girlfriend and said, could you direct us in some place? I don't know. I'd never seen a play. Yeah. So we did Pandora's Box, I think, mm-hmm. was the first one. And I was playing Pandora, and I sounded just like her. Somebody said, what's with the British accent? And it was like, I said, oh, so you managed to get out of your box, did you? This 8-year-old kid or whatever. Yeah. And also we had a very forward, it was in the 60s in elementary school, and we did radio plays over the Tannoid system. Mm. So it was kind of, and I was part of that. And then I did plays in elementary school, and I wrote a play in junior high, but I was mostly did some public speaking then. And then I was in plays in high school with a fabulous woman named Bridget Harrison, was the drama teacher. And a lot of her students went on into the theater. Yeah.
And where was it? Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Toronto, grew up in Etobicoke. Okay. And then I went to, then we moved to Port Credit.
I see.
Which is just the GO train down from Toronto. Mm-hmm. And which was great because I got to see a lot of plays in the 70s when I was in high school. My friend Stephen York had a job as an usher and then a bartender at the Toronto Arts Centre, St. Lawrence Centre, which is now Can Stage and others. Mm-hmm. And so I saw a lot. And and we had very, my teachers were very progressive in high school. Like all my teachers were kind of slightly left of center. One who I've reconnected to a lot of them, and one lived in a commune at the time, Charlie Novogrodsky, and he was history teacher and my drama teacher. We went into Toronto to see the farm show and Under the Grey Whack, and I went in to see the production of Hosanna and Les Belles Sœurs, the first. Les Belles Sœurs was the first English production in Toronto. So I saw a lot of that. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know this was a burgeoning of theater and homegrown theater in Canada. So I feel really lucky that I got to see all that.
And so you went, so from high school, did you go directly to the National Theatre School?
No. I went to Trinity College at U of T. As an honors English major. I was on scholarship at U of T. And then friends of mine, Mary Haney and Jimmy Rankin, who I'd worked with in a puppet troupe in, OFY and LIP, Opportunities for Youth Grants. So I worked with them. They said, sent me a program from NTS saying, hey, and it was it was lovely. It was edited like, this never happened. This was bullshit. This was great. So, I'll audition for that while I was at Trinity. So, and then that summer, I got this letter. I got another scholarship thing and was ready for my second year. And I got this letter from the National Theatre School saying, we are pleased. And I just closed it because I thought, oh my God. So I sort of compromised and said, I'll just go for a year, see how it works out. Defer the scholarships. And I never went back. I asked if my friends could have those scholarships. What did I know? And they said no. So I went to Montreal for 3 years, and I had auditioned for Douglas Rain. I was in class with Nancy Hawk and Joe Ziegler, Duke Thompson, Barbara Duncan, and a myriad of others who left early or, that was theater school back then. It was insane. So I stayed in Montreal, and Douglas Rain, it was the audition. I auditioned for him. I don't think someone told me, a teacher told me I wouldn't have got in if it wasn't for Douglas Rain. So that was interesting. Because, I had done youth theater and things, but I wasn't, you're 18. I don't know.
So the experience, I've spoken about this with a number of guests, and I did in the first series as well, that the subject of theater training, which has been it's been in the news that I read, the discussion about how theater training used to be conducted and how it should be conducted, and the issues now. I mean, what are your memories of having been at NTS? I'm not digging. I'm just curious.
No, I know. It was well, being there, it was lonely. It was kind of terrifying. It was stressful. But it was all about the work. And also, for years there were constant surveys. Would you like the NTS to move to Toronto? Would you? And part of the great thing was that you were away from everything. No agents were coming to look at you early. It was kind of sanctuary as an Anglophone. And you were up against all this great French theater that was going on as well. So, we were, my first year, maybe it was even the first month, René Lévesque was elected. And, I heard all this beeping in the middle of the night, the cars on Saint-Denis and Saint-Joseph, they were just going crazy. And the next day, I think the French students got the day off school and we had to go to work. And I went, oh, that tells a tale. So I liked theater school. It was difficult. We did, I think the first month we had to learn 15 monologues and work on those. And what I remember though, under Douglas Rain, and there was a very, Louis Spurs-Marie did movement and sound, and they were also a couple and a partner, and that was very integrated, the movement and sound. It was very much that training. And also the rigor required. I mean, Douglas Rain was very, I still remember his text class, and we had phonetics even with Martha Henry. Phonetics then, right? You don't do that now.
Yeah.
You know, liquid U, Duke. You know, lawn instead of lawn, and it's city instead of city.
Yes.
You know, D's and T's, all these kinds of things, and they were tools. That's what Douglas Rain said, though. They're tools for your kit. These are basics that you're going to learn. And if you get one show you really enjoy or like during a year, consider yourself fortunate.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of, it was prep. It was prep. And also most of the teachers were all currently working. Like the directors they brought in, the teachers, a lot of them were already working outside in the theater.
Right.
So they were coming in, teaching, and then going back into the stream.
Yes.
So you actually, when you got out of school, you knew a few people. Who might hire you, or so there was that kind of connection.
Sure.
So it was rigorous. It was tough, you know, and doing things that I wasn't that skilled in, like improv and mask work. I love with Kay Lefebvre and all, character mask, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Fencing with Patty Crane. Who was the stand-in for Errol Flynn.
Yeah.
I mean, all these, Madame Elena Voronova was the period dance. She danced with, I think, the Russian ballet. Amazing. The people in Montreal as well. Carl Hare, all these people came in and they were experts.
Yeah.
I know that's a word we kind of go, oh, experts, but they knew what they were talking about.
Oh, sure. And it's not, it's not a dirty word. Right?
No. I mean, as a young person, you want to glean all that you can. You're a sponge. You want to soak it all up. Tell me.
That's right.
Let me know what my, and then you have this sort of, what was it called? Well, it felt like an interrogation or an assassination when they all sat on a table in front of you and they went each by one saying how you were doing this term. And Douglas Rain would say, well, at least your improv wasn't boring, or if it was. So if you thought you got one little thing like that, you went, oh my gosh, I can float for a month. But it was it was. I felt kind of ready for what was out there. Good. I mean, ready. You're never ready. You're never.
No, but you felt ready, and I guessing without the time to deal with hindsight, you just throw yourself at it. I mean, if the work is offered, you do it, and
you do it.
So the transition, I'm understanding then that the transition for you from the training into the profession was fairly smooth. It was. I mean, I auditioned. We didn't do what they do, the showcase now.
Right. We didn't, but some people would. I mean, I was offered a job. Robin Phillips came to see, I think, Ladies in Retirement. I think that Chandra did, and I think he came to see Dan LeBlanc was in, and they were friends, and I think he came to see it, and he offered me a job in his company that year. But I wanted to graduate, or I thought I didn't even think to ask, can I leave early and go to the festival? So I declined. I said thank you, but I have to be. I'm in school.
Right.
I didn't know that Martha Henry, who was the first graduate of the theater school, had left early to go to the festival. But in a way, it was great because the first I was at Blythe Festival, which was new plays, and the first show I did was a collective creation, or a devised piece, as we would call it now. And I was, and then I was thrust into a show that I was doing 2 new plays, This Foreign Land, which was about Dutch and German immigration in the 50s, and then Dolly, which was, I think, Nickel. Oh gosh, see. Got to write it down. And but it was with friends from theater school. Kate Trotter and Sam Malkin were in the company. And then an actress got sick. I was back visiting, and the actress got sick in Death of the Donnellys, which was the Pass Marie Donnellys. And I remember Lane Coleman and Sam Malkin coming in. I was sitting at the diner having a piece of pie, and they said, Shauna, come quick. Karen's sick. I went, what? And they said, come on, we need you. And I'd seen the play once, twice maybe. And so I do remember having an extra bite of pie before I left. And I went, and they said, okay, Karen's going to do the first act, and you step into the second. And I went, oh, okay. She plays Bridget Donnelly and something else. So I put the scenes, where does she exit? And I put the pages on either side, and I looked at one, went on, then got off, looked at the next one. And I was a quick study back then.
Yes.
So, and then I did it at Paul Thompson directed it, and at dinner, I learned the step dance and the first act with Maggie Donnelly, and rehearsed it with Lane Coleman. And I went on that night. And I remember running across, I still remember running across, because there were no dressing rooms. We were in a house 2 doors down and a trailer outside of the theater, because they hadn't built a big addition. And I remember the moon was up, and I'm in this kind of, 1860s dress, skirt and blouse. And they started the fiddle music, and I can hear it wafting through the air. And I look up, and I'm running to go to the theater. And I go, this is the theater. And then later that night, I'm pulling off David Fox's boot. And I'm on stage with Janet Amos and, Annie hanging with me on the show. And I'm going, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
I saw all these people in the farm show, and now I'm pulling off his boot. And it was fabulous. It was and then I finished the run, and that's how I got my equity card. I finished that play for 2 weeks. Oh. And so I did new plays for the first 3 years. I did nothing. I think there was one published play I did, The Misanthrope, but the rest were all new plays. The first show I think I did in Toronto was Macpaps with George Luscombe. After 4 days of auditioning.
Well, you're how lucky to have been able to work with George Luscombe, right?
It was.
Yeah, I mean the first play that I saw in Toronto was, I think it was called The Trial of the Chicago Seven. It was certainly about the Chicago Seven, and I'd never seen. I'm from Montreal, and there certainly wasn't then much in the way of English theater, but I'd never seen anything quite like it. And I knew that I wanted to find out how do you do that, and where does that theater come from? I'd seen pretty traditional, theater. Yeah.
Yes, and it was like, it's so, and it was what I guess we call now verbatim theater. It was letters and excerpts from the Mackenzie Papineau Battalion.
Yes.
And so we had all these things that we enacted, and Astrid Jansen had this amazing set that was just strips that you walked through, and music and singing all the songs of, the movement. And I was playing, it was one of my dad's favorite roles they ever saw me do, was Dolores Ibarruri, who was the leader of the Communist Party in Spain, fighting Franco. And I remember opening night, there were members of the MacPaps there. And one man came up to me, and he took out his wallet, and he said, I want to show you something. And in his wallet, he carried a small picture, and it was of Dolores Ibarruri, because she'd had such an effect on them. Yeah. And the space was so great, because it was like a political forum, right? It was a semicircle, and the seats were hard, but you knew you were there to participate.
Yes, yeah.
Not to sit back. Yeah. You were there to have a response.
Yeah, yeah.
And I felt that with the farm show too. When I saw it, I went, I'm in Port Credit, pretty suburbia, and there's all these, there's women being ducks, and they're not wearing bras, and they're creating a tractor, and that guy throwing the hay bales, he's pretty good. And of course, he's my husband now. We've been together 45 years, but I just kind of was blown away. Yeah. And I said, and they're talking like us.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I saw the farm show. It was a Passmarais production, and they did it in the Stratford Festival Theatre.
Oh, yeah.
One frigid day, and they did it because the theater was filled with the people who, they saw them, it was them, right? They saw themselves, heard themselves, and that was another, first for me. It's just, seeing this, and realizing that there was absolutely no division between those of us sitting in the seats and the actors and the interaction. I mean, it was so vocal and
it was, and recognizable. The gasps of recognition.
That's right.
And even, in Blythe, when they, done remounts or something, you're still hearing people who are related to the people,
Sure.
I mean, and they did, recently they did a farm show at Blythe outside in the big theater. And, but it was an ode to the original production as well, with some new bits from relatives of the people who were in that show.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah. So in doing this work for a few years, when did you first join the Stratford Company? Because you've been with Stratford for a really for a long time, right?
Yeah. For a while I was at Stratford less than I think from 79 to 96. I'd been there 6 years, 6 seasons, but then the rest, 98, I was there for a long time, like a total aberration of 20 years in a row.
Right.
And then I said, time to take a break. It's 20 years. But I think the first time was I auditioned in 19 when John Hirsch took over. I auditioned for him and Muriel Sharon.
Yeah.
And I remember it because I was doing, of course, Queen Margaret on the Molehill at 9 a.m. or something. Yes. Really, really clever. And he said, stop. And he said, he put a chair, one of those wooden stacking chairs, and a wooden hanger. And he said, what are you trying to do in this scene? I said, I'm trying to hurt him. I'm trying to have vengeance for everything he's done to me and my son. But he goes, okay, every time you make a point, hit the chair with the hanger. So I did, but halfway through, the chair's turned over, the hanger's in pieces. I finish it, and he goes, that's where you start.
Yeah. You
go, right. Yeah, right. And I'd already played the role. I did it because I played it in a second year project that Robert Thompson came in to be our senior actor that we were working with.
Okay.
And I went, oh yeah, right. So I think so I didn't get a job from television, needless to say. But they called me back the next year for 82, and they said, this is an offer, we'd like you to do it. And I said, I don't know what. I just said, no, I'm not really interested in that. It was a play I didn't really like that much. But they said, and then they said, we are starting a new training company called the Shakespeare 3 Company. You won't know what you're playing, but you'll be working for 6 weeks with Kristen Linkletter and her team. And I went, yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And we trained for 6 weeks with her and her team, which was, for me, my basic Shakespeare training. Okay. I mean, that was where I got most of my foundation, because you didn't spend that much time on Shakespeare in theater school. So then I said, yeah. And that's when I came to the festival in 1982 as a member of that company.
Right.
And
And what's that like? I mean, when your immediate the preceding years and working in places like the Blythe Festival and creating new work, and then you are moving from that into a kind of machine. And I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's a huge operation.
It's huge.
Yeah. So what is that like for a young performer?
It's daunting, but I think being at the Tom Patterson, the old Tom Patterson, and being with only, I think, 19 people. I think there were, 14 of us and 4 senior members or whatever, and it was an easier wade in.
Yeah.
To this big pool,
right?
And our Charmian King was one of those senior actors, and Joseph Shaw, and so they were wonderful and kind and supportive and would help you. And you had assistant directors. Neil Freeman was an assistant director to oh gosh, Peter from University of Ottawa directed Midsummer Night's Dream. Peter Froelich.
Oh yeah.
And Richard Cottrell was also and his assistant was Larry Lillo, right? So these were people, and the designers were young out of school, Christina Padubiak and Patrick Clark.
Yeah.
So extraordinary talent in that room, and Nikki Godagny and Fiona Reed were in the company, and Diego Matamoros and Billy Vickers, a lot of really talented people. So it was kind of like summer camp in a way, intense, but you were sheltered in a way from all the activity at the festival. Right. You were down the road.
Right.
So it was different. It was a smaller. It was like you were in a company within a company, and that's what we were.
Sure.
And we were certain skill sets. You had to be a few years out of school and not have too much experience in Shakespeare. Was the requisite at that time.
Yeah. And so, did that make it easier when you moved sort of into the festival itself, like as part of the larger operation?
Yeah, and I wasn't, I didn't have major roles. So it wasn't like I was thrust into the big stage, never having been on it. And having to carry a show or something.
Sure.
But I was in 3 plays, As You Like It, Scottish play, and Tartuffe. So I got to be in a fitting room with Tanya Mozevich, which I didn't realize how extraordinary that was at the time, of course. And I played, it was Des McAnuff's first Shakespeare, I think. And then, and John Hirsch was directing As You Like It. I'll never forget his opening speech. My goodness. Boy, he was good with looking at the play and relating it to the world we're in. And, but so I was like an as cast in that, and I understudied Roberta Maxwell. Right. And then I was asked to understudy her later in the Scottish play with As Lady M. So I had 2 big understudies. Yeah. And I went on as Rosalind 3 times. And I think I sounded like her because you're going around the river going, no, Orlando. I'm hearing her voice as I'm saying it. So I think I probably sounded a bit like her. Yeah. And I would watch it. Then you didn't have videos of it or whatever. Sure. So I would climb up in the catwalk in the show and which is right. You're looking through the roof over the top of the the theater, watching the play to see how it's going. And Rosemary Dunsmore was in that. And when I went on, she would guide me. Here, you go over here now. And you go, and everybody's guiding you around and helping you. And the second time was kind of sublime and perfect because you had a bit of confidence and the terror wasn't as crippling. Yes. And the third time, you're on your own, kid. Then it's like, you know that bit where you do this could be, they go, I want my bits back that I had, or this, I'm missing that moment I have with Roberta. I think that's why Maggie Smith said, always go on more than twice or something. Yeah. Because, you haven't rehearsed it. Right. You haven't rehearsed it. It's adrenaline and go out there. Yeah. So, yeah. But so I think that was also another gradual move in, but you're working on a big stage and it was the festival. So I got to learn and I watched some of the most marvelous actors, Douglas Campbell, Nikki Pennell, Amelia Hall was in Tartuffe. Yeah. And then we did that again the next year. And then, So,
well now what's your vantage or how do you, when there are, as a senior member of the company and so familiar with the process and people are so familiar with you, how do you see young actors who are joining the company, for the first time? What is that like for them?
I think it's scary. Yeah. I mean, there have been so many attempts to try and make it less frightening, less daunting, less for a long time we had mentors that were assigned, or somebody would ask, these people are willing to be mentors, who would you like? And the newcomers would pick one or two, and sometimes they'd get their first choice or their second choice, and those people would be there for them, responsible. And I always volunteered for that. And then we do pro days now, which are pre-rehearsal orientation, and they have moved towards just encouraging a voice in the room. I think encouraging people to have a voice in the room, because you're so intimidated. You don't sometimes feel you have the right to speak. And so depending on the director, of course, I think it's to encourage everyone to feel that they can ask a question. And so I think that's part of it. And now they're in the Birmingham Conservatory, which is kind of a continuation of the Shakespeare 3 Company, which became the Young Company, which became the Birmingham Conservatory. In it, that is about training, and I have taught for them for ever since they started. It's amazing to see, to think of kids that I taught, and they're now 50, and you go, okay, I guess I really am that old. As I look at their kids and I'm going, oh my gosh. But this year I'm an associate artist in the conservatory, and I just finished, I'm just doing several text classes with them. And also just to say, this will help, or here's something to be aware of, in the space or whatever, just to pass on, because that is something that has been built, and it's because it's what you learned yourself, is that to pass on your knowledge or your advice. But usually I only did it when asked, because they're also, when you're working with young people, they're also your colleagues.
Yes.
So if someone asks me, I will volunteer something, and I'm also aware of what the director is wanting, or you translate what you think they're wanting. So I think you feel a bit of a duty about that, because I wouldn't have survived Romeo and Juliet without Trish Connolly. And she was playing my mother, the sort of distant mom, but she was in real life, she was my nurse. Because I spent more time in her dressing room crying, I think, than I did on stage. But that's another tale.
Well, can you talk about that a bit?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
It was 1984, and Peter Hughes was directing, and he apparently had the reputation of a tyrant, but kind of a brilliant guy, man. And then he'd had a stroke, and he had directed Comedy of Errors, and then he was invited back to direct Romeo and Juliet, and he was, had an amazing reputation. But I think I got 2 notes from him, which were, the R in curtain is a bit hard, and I remember saying, would you like me to soften it, Peter? He said, no. That's the problem with us foreign directors. It's just at that moment you ceased to be Juliet. You sounded a bit like a Canadian actress. And I went, yes, that's what I am. I was a mouthy Irish kid, right? Irish Polish. I mean, mouthy. I don't know where that came from, but I just went, whoa, wrong thing to say to me, because I've been fighting to keep my R's in this building.
Yes.
With Tartu, I was asked. I was brought in to have an accent for Tartuffe, because all my colleagues were British, and they sounded British.
Yes.
And I said, well, whose accent do you want me to do? Nikki Pennell's, Douglas Campbell's, and Douglas said, no, don't worry, darling, I'll soften mine. And I went, oh, great. So I forgot about it, and then 3 weeks later, I was called in for a voice class about the accent, and I just lost it. I went, what? We are doing a French play by an American on a Canadian stage, and you want me to... I don't think I'd have a problem now. In fact, I'd like to do accents occasionally. I love doing them. But at that point, I just didn't understand it. So, so my questions were, I think, considered I was difficult.
Okay.
I am, I think, considered difficult. I know directors have said, you are resistant.
Okay.
And that's mostly because, well, no, one director said that, but because I asked questions. I just wanted to know why. I can figure it out, but tell me why, and that'll inform me. That'll help me. Not meant as any kind of criticism, but I've always, I look at my pictures as a kid, And I didn't like getting pictures. I still don't like getting pictures taken, but I remember they said smile. So I put on this little smile, but my brow was furrowed. So it was this strange little, why are you asking me to smile? You know, so because, as I think, Mike called you, you are a curious cat. And I really like that phrase because I think I'm a curious cat too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what still excites me about working with young people and students, because it reminds me what I don't know as well. I've never thought about it. You know, so that's I don't know where we started with that.
No, you were talking a little bit about the experience playing Juliet, but that's fine. I mean, I've done quite a bit of teaching as well, and I've always found, especially when the students are curious and they're willing to try anything and they're not afraid. How dangerous could it be to try that line in a different way? You know, all that stuff. And how freeing it is for me to be in a room where I'm not directing, you know, and where there is no rush, and you really have time, because in performance, in rehearsal, time, Shakespeare has addressed time in myriad ways, but I become so concerned. I mean, I sort of throw this over to stage management, but having said that, I know that part of me is always hearing the clock ticking, always, which isn't good, you know. And it sometimes can, it can occasionally create something for an actor like you, for a curious actor, to feel that I'm preoccupied, or there isn't time, or is there time to ask a question? The teaching is a lovely opportunity to learn.
And also the fact that but I think, we do as actors too, especially when you're used to working 3 weeks and you open, or 3 weeks and a bit of tech, in some places 2 weeks.
Yes.
You kind of, now you sort of say, I'm going to make some big choices quick, fast, so I can toss them out or throw them out, because the danger is that you find a choice that is okay, and then you hang on to it because, oh my gosh, we open in 2 days. And you go, it's a play. And we all know how a play changes from opening to closing.
Yeah.
And so you go, if you've got a thought, when people say first reading, no acting required, and I go, you're an actor. Why resist it? If you have an idea or a thought, put it in there, and we discard it. Throw it away. It's not, there's no final edit here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess there is kind of, but you keep changing.
Yes.
You have to keep, especially if it's a long run, you have to have some new impetus or impulse to sort of spur you on that particular day, even if it's a different verb you say to yourself before you walk on. Startle, discombobulate, scare.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm assuming, I mean, there's a lot of assumption here, right? I'm assuming that given the range of what you've played and where you've played, and having spent a long time in a repertory company, but also probably as much time in sort of dedicated one-off type productions, whether it's that the transition of moving from one to the other, what it's like to rehearse in 3 weeks or with the length of time, as opposed to over a number of months, where people that I haven't worked in that system, but I know from speaking to people, they say, well, if you add up all the actual rehearsal time, it works out to be pretty much the same, except what you don't have in the work, in most of the work that I do, is you don't have think time.
That's right.
It's quick. And when you have I know with Studio 180, I said, the plays we have done, the plays I did, it was either 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on what the size of the show was. I said, it's a luxury, having spent much too much time before that, with feeling that you were often playing a kind of I dare you game. You've got 10 days to rehearse, and it's a new show, and you're saying, of course you say yes, until eventually you say, I can't do it. No, that's for somebody else. I've done this, and no. Well,
I know.
it's not where I belong.
And some shows, if you're doing 3-week rehearsal, you realize I have to learn a lot of this before, because these are
Yes.
long, long monologues. It's almost like, not a one-person show, but like these are long monologues.
Yes.
And so you're kind of subsidizing by memorizing that before,
That's right.
while you're doing something else, because you won't be able to do it.
That's right.
If you don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, rehearsal time always, right?
Yeah.
You think, just give me just a little more. Is there ever enough?
Yes. No, that's true. That's true.
And also because I think, and certainly it's right about, in directing into 3 months, sometimes you have good secondaries. So you're in there every day, and the secondaries, you're grateful because it's just 3 people, 5 people, the scene. But when you have time on stage, that's the thing you're longing for, because it's the only time you get everybody at a certain point in rehearsal, because everybody's going to something else. And you have to start tech soon too, as soon as you can eke that in, because it's a lot to do.
Yeah. I think my aim always is by the time you move into tech, to say, well, at least we can allow, like, no one is going to freak out knowing you're not really going to be doing anything with the play for the next few days.
Yes.
And when you get back to it, you will have something already there, instead of what has certainly, it's happened more than once, is that tech, you begin to hate that period because the play, you're not ready. You know that the play is you've sort of abandoned the play. It's terrible. Is the curiosity, you talked about being curious and asking questions. Was some of that, and you say that there are people who, say you are difficult because you ask questions, but was some of the questioning, did any of that lead you to directing? Because I know that that's something that's probably newer for you, but you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah. Well, I'd probably be cranky too. Maybe that's why I'm difficult. Maybe it's my frown. I tell people, don't take my face seriously, because sometimes just my face in repose is like, what? I think, my teachers in school too ask questions, Bernard Hopkins he was a teacher at theater school too. And I did plays with him. And, well, it's about digging, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And I think I always looked at a play, and maybe it's because I also was a literature major, and I saw Shakespeare's history coming alive in a way. I think I was always saw my function in the play. Where do I fit in? Why is this character here? Do you want, and I remember having a conversation when I was asked to play Jessica Merchant, saying, do you want Jessica to reflect a good relationship with her father, or do you want her to be very young and flighty and not even concerned? And that director at the time, Mark, said, I want it to be a painful wrenching. I went, great, because that's how I see it right now. I mean, it might change later on.
Yeah.
Whereas when I did it with Michael Lang, when I was playing Portia, Jessica was the young, flighty girl who got, and much more so than the Jessica I was asked to do.
Yeah.
But that's interpretation.
Sure.
So I always had a feeling about the whole piece.
Yeah.
And, I listen so much on the tannoy, and I hear things, and I tell by hearing, oh, yeah, that was it, or, off tonight, or, and so I remember, and my husband, Miles Potter, he always said, you should be directing, you should be doing it. And I said, I don't know. Right? Yeah. And I was an assistant director in '89 on Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, just before I was about to do it.
Right.
So that was, I thought, helpful. And then I was doing, what was it, Marrying Van Lee with Neil Monroe at the Shaw. And it was our first break, 2 days, we're sitting at a table. And he was coming out for a smoke, and I was coming out for some air. And he sat down at the pig table. He said, so, when are you going to direct? And I went, oh God, I've asked too many questions. That's all I could think. I just saw it as like, oh God, shut up, don't say anything. But I see it as an extension. I don't see it as something, I have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I don't think I have the same kind of ego attached to directing. I think I feel really insecure as a director because I think I'm quite diplomatic, and I think sometimes you need to be not so diplomatic.
Yeah.
And my joy is in enabling actors.
Yes.
It's not so much putting my stamp on a play, or this is how I see it. Or sometimes it's like, it's time to see this play again. Like I've been wanting to see good E.P. Taylor's Good done again, and it's never had a production in Toronto. And if ever there was a time, there's always a time, though, isn't there? For not taking action or normalizing the world that you find yourself in, so that paralysis sets in. Oh, hello. Let's read the headlines. But I don't think I have the same drive to direct. I love coaching and teaching that way. Because it's less people to feel responsible for.
Sure.
Because you want people to do their best work and enable them to do their best work.
Yeah.
So, but I think questions always. Why? Well, I learned something the other day. I said, I don't know the answer to that. Why that and that? Or why those two words? Why we use them there? And so I still have to look that up. But anyway, I think, and also plays, right? Do we really want to have the answer given us on the play? Don't we want to be provoked into thinking, feeling, having discussion about that play? Because we know the person beside us is receiving the play totally differently.
Right. And that's a very fine point, because I know from current cultural politics. Currently, it just seems to me that it's a matter of, you have to declare, or you are told what your side is. That there are few conversations that audiences. I don't know that audiences want this, but it seems that that a lot of theater is produced sort of feeding the audience rather than challenging or leaving things unexplained. So that's, that's not good.
No, and I think, it's like even with Shakespeare, you go, leave some mystery there.
Yes, yeah.
He's written mystery in this ending.
Yeah.
It's an ellipsis, ...
That's right. Yeah.
Or at least some characters certainly are.
Sure.
You are moved. I go to the theater a lot. I realize. Because I like it. There's so many things on right now. I'm going, and I just had hip surgery, so I'm going, well, I can't get into that. But I want to see them all. Because I go, I don't know that script, or I want to see those three actors together. Or or your friends are acting, and you want to see what they're doing. But that's, I would rather go to, if I had a choice, movie theater or theater. There's no choice for me.
Right.
It's just no. And it's because it's pleasurable for me.
Right.
And to hear writers, to hear them, like, audiobooks with visuals.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But because the theater, as we know, is life size.
That's right.
It's not on the small screen. It's not on the big screen.
Yeah.
And everybody, you had to be there.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
You had to be there.
Yep. So with the work, and I know that your husband, that Miles, directs a great deal, and that you've worked together many times. Are you able to? Are you conscious about carving a personal sort of family life that is not separate from, but that doesn't get subsumed by the professional world, or is it pretty much one and the same?
When Miles is directing, we didn't if I had questions about something at the end of the day, I might ask, but I never talked to him about fellow cast members or anything, because that's his purview, and and I'm on the other side.
Right.
To be with the actors.
Yeah.
But we did, often when we were thinking about doing play or trying to pitch a play or something or project, we would have this like storm of, brainstorming and talking about it, or what if. But in rehearsal, no. And, the aberration is that my son, Callan, I was at the festival for 20 years straight, since the year he was born.
Right.
So and I kept saying to him, because he got himself an agent at 16 or 17. I went, wait. But I said, this is an aberration. This is not life in Canadian theater, just so you know. And he's currently acting in The Heist at the Grand right now, which is, so, he's, and even though his and then he went to the National Theatre School after doing some TV and film. So I guess it couldn't have been that bad a life. I sort of say, I take this as a sort of compliment, in a way, that it wasn't so wretched that his parents were taking him all over the country before he was 5 in the States to work. But the theater was part of it. I mean, he saw green rooms, and he was at a fitting. But we also had Emma Rain, who is the daughter of Douglas Rain and Martha Henry, and she was our other family member.
Okay.
When we were working, and all throughout until he was around 14 and wouldn't have a babysitter.
Right.
So we wanted the T-shirt "Thank God for Emma," because she would go to teacher school meetings. She would, and probably because I had Cal when I was older, much older than 30. I mean, I was 40, I think, and 41 maybe, and so I had established myself, really. And if I was out of town, I could say, could I please have a crib in the room? Or can you give me a list of babysitters? Or, so I think that was helpful, rather than, being 25 with a young child would be tough. And now it's very different too, because the landscape has kind of changed. I mean, you used to travel all over the country in the theater, and you don't now. And it's, actors from Edmonton only need apply, or we're looking for local actors, New Brunswick. I get the equity audition things mostly to see what's up for my son, really. Like, oh, you might try this or whatever. But so I think it's balanced. I mean, I would say that to young people too. But the great thing is, like, work-life balance is actually a phrase that exists now. Because before you were expected to put all that behind. It didn't matter.
That's right.
And how can you have a creative life if you have nothing? And it won't hold your hand at the end.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll feel like you don't belong at all in the community, or and so to have a life, cultivate a life with friends and your family, I think is really important for young people.
Sure.
And not to take, to take the work seriously, but not yourself, and don't take it personally, because it's so much rejection. I think that's why many people say to their kids anything but.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's rejection everywhere.
Oh, sure. No, and I think it's true that if this is the work that somebody wants to do, once you're looking for the work, or once you're out, whether it's audition, whatever you're doing to try to start or build a career, you're going to find out really quickly if you've got, if you're the right fit, because it's not. I don't think anybody can put up with, being successful and then suddenly wondering if you're ever going to work again. I mean, those are not. They're not cliches, because that's really what happens. Yeah. And in teaching, I've met really talented, passionate people who have tried for a year or two, and at least give themselves the freedom to say, this just isn't. I love doing this, but not like this. I mean, I just can't see myself.
Yeah, I've said to, to myself even, I said it, I didn't call myself an actor for 5 years until after I was out of theater school.
Yeah.
I said, if there's more pain than pleasure, I'll do something else.
Yeah.
I'll find something else. And I still feel that way. I mean, I have a flower shop in my mind somewhere, but I feel like I will something. And I haven't had to, which has been really nice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've known young actors that I thought they are so talented, so uber talented. And then they could not get a job for years. And the conclusion I come to about that is don't even ask yourself why, because there are so many variables. You have no idea about it. But someone out there thinks your work is great and thinks your work is wonderful. And so don't, you feel like, oh, they hate me, I can't act. And my gosh, I mean, I've certainly had my share of horrific reviews, last time I read them, 20 years ago or something. But I mean, I'm serious about that, just because they're too hurtful.
Yeah.
And because I go, and I told a critic once saying, it was an interview, and said, so you don't like reading reviews? I said, well, no. I said, we're having a nice chat now. But if I read all the reviews you wrote, I'd probably want to throttle you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he looked shocked, and I went, well, it's true.
Absolutely.
Or I go, you don't think that has an effect on me?
Yeah.
That, because, or you make some horrible comment about looks or age, or my lips are too thin for comedy. You see, I remember that one. And I said, Jesus. Oh, I guess I better get those collagen shots. So I used to go around, collagen for comedy. That may have been the last one I, looked at. It was like,
no, it's
God, terrible.
It's lethal. No, it is. As in Toronto, the one critic who I really enjoyed reading, and who Robert Cushman, certainly of the things that I read,
yes,
was never personal. It was never. I never felt he was writing for himself, and he wasn't showing off. I mean, it was just. But it's a really. It's a power position. More often than it's not.
And trying to be witty with some sort of contemporary reference, and aren't I smart? And you go, oh, not really. And well, also Robert Cushman was a good writer.
Absolutely, yes,
and is a good writer.
That's right.
Right, so that you can appreciate his writing as well.
That's right.
So anyway, enough about critics.
Yes, let's quite enough.
Let's not have more oxygen.
Okay.
I mean, they're just. I used to say, the thing that I would say to people is, I don't, you have to see my work to make your living, but I don't have to see yours to make mine.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lot. That is great. And that's a lovely place for us to say thank you.
Oh dear.
No. This was really terrific. And I appreciate your time and your extensive resume.
Sorry you had to read it.
No. Don't. Oh, no, not at all. Thank you very much, Seana, and I look forward to seeing you many times in the near future. Yep.
In the lobby, I hope.
Okay.
I see a lot of people in the lobbies.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Okay.
It was lovely chatting with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it was a pleasure. And for everybody who is listening, thank you. And please share this episode. Tell your friends about it. Follow the podcast. It really does make a difference knowing that as Seana and I are talking, and any number of guests and I are talking, that we aren't talking to ourselves alone. And as we move along, looking ahead to Series 3, we can do that with your support. And this is a shameless request for support, because, as you know, there are no there's no advertising, there are no sponsors. This is a self-funded passion project. That label was given to me by somebody who I met when I was exploring how do you do a podcast. So that's what this is. And if you are able to support, you can do it in Canada by emailing Jerica Life in Stages, Jerica Life in Stages @rogers.com. That would be an e-transfer. And outside of the country, you would use Patreon, patreon.com/Life in Stages. And the directions there are very clear. Thanks again. And I look forward to many more guests. Bye-bye.